The eldest brother sighed. Tomorrow the entire village will be talking about this. They already are, the second brother muttered. Then we need to act before the rumors grow worse, the eldest brother continued. Either we deny it. No, the father's voice cut through sharply. Everyone froze. His expression was dark, but firm. He already said it in front of everyone, he said. If we deny it now, we'll only make it uglier. And him? The second brother asked. You're just going to accept that man? The father didn't answer immediately. His gaze dropped to the floor. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, if he insists on this path, his voice was heavy, then he will bear the consequences. The words sounded harsh, but beneath them, there was something else. Not rejection, not entirely. The eldest sister let out a quiet breath, her hand still resting over her stomach. Then at least we should see what kind of person that man really is. The second brother scoffed, but didn't argue. The eldest brother nodded slowly. That's the only way. Outside, the night wind stirred softly. Inside the Shen household, no one spoke again for a long time. Each of them sat with their own thoughts, their own worries, their own doubts. And beyond the courtyard walls, Shen Yuchen was already walking a different path.
The courtyard was quiet
that change all of their lives.
The kind of silence that pressed against the chest and refused to let go. Shen Yuchen sat alone in the small side room assigned to him, the oil lamp flickering weakly beside his bed. The walls were rough, the air heavy with the scent of earth and smoke, everything he had once despised. In his previous life, he had hated this place. Hated the narrow space, the coarse bedding, the way the villagers spoke too loudly and laughed too freely. Hated the calloused hands of his parents, the awkward care of his siblings. He had never hidden it. He wore his resentment like armor, spoke sharply, looked down on them, refused to eat with them, refused to work, refused to belong. A spoiled young master dragged into mud. Even when his mother quietly mended his clothes late into the night, even when his father silently fixed the leaking roof above his bed, even when his sister saved him the softest portion of food, he had turned away, cold, distant, unforgiving. And yet, they had tried. God, how they had tried. Until that last night. The memory surfaced slowly, like a wound reopening. After the incident with Shu Yan, everything had collapsed. The accusations, the rumors, the humiliation. His father had beaten Shu Yan until his own hands trembled from exhaustion. Yu Chen had watched and said nothing. No, worse than that. He had stood there and let it happen. Because anger had blinded him. Because he needed someone to blame. Shu Yan's blood on the ground, his own voice accusing him, the villagers' hatred. It all blurred together into something unbearable. And then came the final breaking point. His father had called him into the hall that night. The entire family was there, just like earlier. But the atmosphere was different, heavy, desperate. Yu Chen, his mother had said, her voice trembling. Just admit your mistake. We can still fix this. We'll go speak to them, arrange something, a marriage, an explanation, anything. His eldest sister, pale from pregnancy, had reached for his hand. We're your family, she whispered. We'll protect you. Even his stern father had looked at him with something fragile in his eyes. Bow your head, he said gruffly. Just this once. I will handle the rest. Handle the rest. What he meant was sacrifice everything they had to save him. Their dignity, their savings, their standing in the village. All for a son who had never once treated them kindly. And what had Yu Chen done? He laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh that cut through the room. I don't need any of you, he had said coldly. The words still echoed. His mother's face had gone pale. His sister's hand had fallen away. His father's expression shattered. I'd rather die than stay here, Yu Chen had continued, every word laced with poison. Silence. Then, a sound. A slap. His father's hand struck his face so hard that the world spun. You ungrateful? His father's voice broke, anger mixing with something far more painful. We raised you, and this is what you say? But Yu Chen only looked at him with cold eyes and turned away. That night, everything broke. His sister went into early labor from the stress. The child didn't survive. His mother fell ill soon after, her body unable to bear the shock. His father aged 10 years in a single night. His brothers stopped looking at him as family, and Yu Chen left, without looking back. By the time he understood what he had lost, it was too late. The oil lamp flickered. Present returned. Yu Chen's fingers tightened slowly. His chest ached, not from the beating earlier, but from memory, from regret, from knowing exactly how far everything had once fallen. Tonight, the same events had begun. His father had still shouted, still forced him to kneel. Shu Yan had still been beaten, hard, mercilessly, each strike heavier than the last. But this time, Yu Chen had not stayed silent. Even as his father's anger turned on Shu Yan, he had spoken, tried to stop it. Not enough to prevent it entirely, but enough to change something, just slightly. The door creaked softly. Yu Chen stood. The house was asleep, or pretending to be. He slipped out quietly, steps light against the ground. The night air was cold, but familiar. He knew exactly where to go. Shu Yan's place was on the edge of the village, a broken house no one wanted. Perfect for someone like him. The door wasn't locked. It never was. Yu Chen pushed it open gently. Inside, the faint smell of medicine and blood lingered. Shu Yan sat on the bed, shirt half removed, revealing bruises spreading across his back and shoulders. Dark, ugly, fresh. He didn't turn around. I thought you wouldn't come, he said. Yu Chen closed the door behind him. I almost didn't, he replied softly. Silence. Then, slowly, he walked closer. In his hand, a small jar of ointment. Shu Yan glanced at it, then at him. You brought medicine? Yu Chen didn't answer. He simply sat down behind him, dipped his fingers into the ointment, and gently pressed it against the bruised skin. Shu Yan's muscles tensed slightly, then relaxed. Neither of them spoke for a while. Only the quiet sound of breathing filled the room. Why? Shu Yan asked finally. Yu Chen's hand paused for a fraction of a second. Because I owe you, he said. You don't. I do. The words were firm, certain. I said something I shouldn't have once, and it ruined everything. Shu Yan didn't ask further, but something in his expression softened. Just a little. Your family, Shu Yan said after a moment. They won't accept this. I know. Still going to stay? Yu Chen's gaze lowered slightly. In his past life, he had left, and everything had fallen apart. This time, I won't run. Shu Yan was silent. Then, what about revenge? He asked suddenly, tone casual but eyes sharp. Yu Chen's fingers stilled again. The room seemed to grow colder. Slowly, he spoke. They wanted to ruin me, he said. Then I'll let them think they succeeded. Shu Yan turned his head slightly, watching him. And then? Yu Chen's lips curved faintly. Not soft, not gentle, but something colder, smarter. I'll take everything from them, he said quietly. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not the lazy, careless grin people feared, but something sharper, interested. Sounds fun, he said. Yu Chen continued applying the ointment, his movement steady now. Outside, the night remained silent, but inside that small broken house.
Something had changed.
Not just fate, but him. This time, he would not destroy the people who loved him, and he would not forgive the ones who didn't.
The night had thinned into the quiet gray before dawn by the time Shen Yu-chen returned. He stepped over the threshold without a sound. The courtyard still carried the faint chill of night, but the main hall lamp had long burned out. Only the lingering warmth of human presence remained, like a conversation that had ended but refused to leave. He paused for a moment, then walked to his room. No one stopped him, but he knew they had heard him return. Morning came quickly in the village. The rooster's cry broke the silence, followed by the clatter of pots and the low murmur of waking voices. Smoke curled from chimneys, carrying the scent of simple meals into the air. Shen Yu-chen stepped out into the courtyard as if nothing had happened. His expression was calm, too calm. His mother glanced at him from the kitchen, lips parting slightly, but she said nothing. His father sat already in the main hall, waiting. Before anyone could speak, voices rose outside the gate, loud, unrestrained. "Move aside! Make way!" A burst of laughter followed, rough and unpolished. The second brother's expression darkened instantly. What now? The wooden gate swung open with a creak, and Shu Yan walked in as if he belonged there. Behind him trailed a few familiar figures, the village troublemakers who usually followed him around like shadows. They carried baskets, bundles, and an unmistakable air of mischief. In Shu Yan's hand, a bundle of fresh vegetables, still dusted with soil, clearly not bought. The courtyard fell silent. Then, a few villagers gathered at the entrance, drawn by the commotion. Whispers began immediately. He actually came. With his gang? Does he think this is a joke? Maybe it's real. Real? With him? A snort of laughter broke out from somewhere in the crowd. One of Shu Yan's men scratched his head sheepishly. "Boss said it's fresher this way." Another added proudly, "We picked the best ones." That only made the laughter louder. Even the second brother's face turned black with anger. This is ridiculous. But before he could step forward, a sharp sound cut through everything. Bang! The father slammed his hand against the table. Silence fell instantly. Even the villagers outside quieted. He stood up, slowly, his gaze fixed on Shu Yan, heavy, pressing. "You call this courting?" His voice was low, but carried absolute authority. Shu Yan didn't flinch. Yes. The answer came just as simply. The father's eyes moved to the vegetables in his hand, then back to his face. "And what can you offer him?" he asked. The question hung in the air, not mocking, not loud, but sharp enough to pierce through all the noise. Shu Yan didn't answer immediately. For once, he paused, because the truth was simple. He had nothing. No status, no wealth, no future that anyone respectable would acknowledge. Just a name that made people wary, and fists that solved problems the wrong way. The father's voice came again, colder this time. "My son is a gur," he said. "Do you know what that means?" Shu Yan's jaw tightened slightly. "It means his life cannot be careless. His reputation, his future, everything is tied to the man he marries." A pause. Then, "If you stand here and speak of courting," his gaze sharpened, "then show me you are worthy." The courtyard held its breath. Shu Yan's grip on the vegetables tightened. "So," the father said, each word deliberate, "what can you achieve?" Silence. The villagers leaned in, waiting, watching, judging. Before Shu Yan could respond, a voice spoke. "Father." All eyes turned. Shen Yu-chen stepped forward slowly. His expression remained composed, but his gaze was steady. "He doesn't need to prove everything today," Yu-chen said. The father's brows furrowed. "And when then?" he demanded. Yu-chen made his gaze. "In time." The answer was calm, certain, as if he already knew the outcome. Shu Yan glanced at him, just briefly, but something in his eyes shifted. Not hesitation, not doubt, but something sharper, a decision forming. The father looked between them. His expression hardened. "Fine," he said at last. "If you want to court him, then do it properly." His voice rose slightly, carrying to the villagers outside. "From today on, you will not step into this house casually. You will not meet him in secret, and you will not bring shame to this family." Each rule fell like a hammer. Then, the final one. "Until you can stand with something in your hands worth showing," he said coldly. "You are not qualified to speak of marriage." Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Shu Yan stood there for a moment. Then, he nodded. Once. No arguments. No defiance. "All right. Simple. Direct." He turned slightly, tossing the vegetables to one of his men. "Leave them. At least let them eat." A few awkward chuckles rose from his gang. The tension loosened just a little. Before leaving, Shu Yan looked at Shen Yu-chen again. Their eyes met. No words, but everything was understood. Then he turned and walked out. This time, without looking back. The courtyard slowly returned to life. But something had changed. Not just in the villagers' whispers, but in the way they looked at him. At both of them. And standing there under the morning light, Shen Yu-chen knew. The game had truly begun. The Shen family courtyard in the city was quiet in a different way. Not the quiet of empty fields or sleeping livestock, but the kind shaped by wealth, discipline, and control. Servants moved like shadows. Footsteps soft. Voices lower than whispers. Every object had its place. Every person knew their role. And at the center of it, Shen Liang leaned lazily against a carved wooden couch, one leg crossed over the other, a porcelain cup balanced between his fingers. Sunlight filtered through silk curtains, casting a soft glow over his refined features. Everything here belonged to him. It always should have. A servant approached him, bowing slightly. Young Master Liu Ming's arrived." Shen Liang's lips curved faintly. "Let him in." Moments later, footsteps echoed lightly through the hall. Liu Mingzi entered as if he owned the air itself, elegant, composed, dressed in tailored fabrics that spoke of quiet luxury. His gaze swept the room once before settling on Shen Liang. "You're in a good mood today," Mingzi said, voice smooth. Shen Liang smiled, setting the cheek aside. "Shouldn't I be?" He stood, walking toward him with unhurried steps. "The matter is resolved." Mingzi's eyes flickered slightly. "Resolved?" he repeated. Shen Liang stopped in front of him, tilting his head. "My dear brother is exactly where he belongs now." A faint pause. Something unreadable passed through Mingzi's gaze. "I heard," he said after a moment. "The village incident." Shen Liang smiled deepened, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ah, yes, that." His tone was light, almost amused. "Locked in a room with a hooligan. Quite a fitting ending, don't you think?" Silence lingered. Mingzi didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked past Shen Liang, fingers brushing lightly along the edge of the table. "I didn't expect it to go that far," he said quietly. Shen Liang's expression stilled for a fraction of a second. Then, "It had to," he replied. His voice softened, almost gentle. "You know how he is. If given even a chance, he would climb back up." He stepped closer again, closing the distance between them. Mingzi turned slightly, meeting his gaze. For a brief moment, there was something like hesitation in his eyes. "He wasn't weak," Mingzi murmured. The words slipped out unconsciously. A memory. A fragment. Shen Yu-chen standing in the courtyard, sunlight catching his hair, eyes clear despite everything. Soft, but not fragile. Mingzi's fingers tightened slightly. Shen Liang noticed. Of course he did. His gaze darkened subtly. Without warning, he reached out, grasping Mingzi's collar and pulling him closer. Still thinking about him, his voice dropped, no longer playful. Mingzi blinked, caught off guard. Before he could respond, Shen Liang leaned in and kissed him. Not gently, not softly. Possessive, demanding, cutting off any lingering thoughts before they could form. Mingzi stiffened for a brief second, then relaxed. His hand lifted lightly against Shen Liang's shoulder. The hesitation in his eyes faded, like a ripple disappearing in the still water. When they parted, Shen Liang watched him closely. "Don't forget," he said quietly. "You're mine now." Mingzi exhaled softly, his expression returning to its usual calm. "I didn't say otherwise." But his gaze no longer held that flicker of nostalgia. Shen Liang smiled again. Satisfied. He leaned back slightly, fingers brushing against Mingzi's sleeve, as if nothing had happened. "Good," he said lightly. "Then don't mention him again." as if Shen Yuchen had never existed. Outside, the wind stirred the curtains. Inside, the past was quietly buried, or at least, that's what Shen Liang believed. Because far away, in a small rural village, the person they thought they had already destroyed was no longer the same. The broken house at the edge of the village had never been this noisy before. Idiot, that's not how you do it. Then you do it. I am doing it. A loud crash echoed as two grown men tumbled into a pile of straw, knocking over a wooden stool. Zhu Yan sat on the only intact chair in the room, one elbow resting on his knee, fingers pressing hard against his temple. His gang was useless, completely useless. I told you to think, he said slowly, voice dangerously calm, not fight. One of them froze mid-swing, blinking. We were thinking. Yeah, another added proudly, rubbing his bruised arm. Thinking with our fists. Zhu Yan closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt stupid. His father's words echoed in his mind. What can you achieve? He had stood there ready to answer, and realized he had nothing. No skill, no knowledge, nothing that could stand proudly in front of Shen Yuchen. His jaw tightened. Useless, he muttered. Boss? One of them asked cautiously. Zhu Yan stood abruptly. The chair scraped harshly against the ground. Shut up, he snapped. The room instantly fell silent. Even the two who had been fighting moments ago scrambled apart, sitting stiffly like punished children. Zhu Yan ran his hair through his hair, pacing once, twice, then stopped. Because the truth was, he didn't know what to do. For the first time in his life, fists couldn't solve it. Threats couldn't fix it. Even stubbornness felt empty. Damn it, he cursed under his breath. And just then, a soft sound came from outside. A knock. Light. Careful. Everyone froze. The men exchanged glances. Who would come here? One whispered. Zhu Yan didn't answer, because he already knew. He moved before anyone else could react, pushing open the door in one swift motion. And there, under the fading evening light, stood Shen Yuchen, calm as ever, as if the distance between them meant nothing. Zhu Yan's eyes flickered. You came. Yuchen didn't reply to that. Instead, he stepped forward slightly, holding something wrapped carefully in cloth. For you. Zhu Yan frowned, taking it instinctively. When he opened it, his expression changed. Books. Several of them. Old but well kept. Precious. What is this? He asked, though the answer was already forming in his mind. Yuchen met his gaze steadily. You asked what you can achieve. This is the beginning. Zhu Yan stared at him. Learn to read, Yuchen continued. Learn to write. Learn how the world works outside this village. His voice was calm, but firm. If you want to stand in front of my father again, he said quietly, you need more than strength. Silence fell behind them. Then, a low whistle. Boss, you're studying now? One of them asked, leaning against the doorframe, grinning shamelessly. Another laughed. Didn't see the day I will. Careful, someone else added. Our boss might become a scholar. The teasing grew louder, unrestrained. Zhu Yan's grip tightened slightly on the books. Shut up, he muttered. But this time, there was no real bite in it. Yuchen ignored them completely, as if their voices didn't exist. I'll come every night, after everyone sleeps. Zhu Yan looked up sharply. You don't have to. I do. The answer was immediate. No hesitation. Yuchen's gaze softened slightly. You don't know where to start, so I'll teach you. The room fell quiet again. Even the teasing stopped, because something about those words was too steady, too serious. One of the men coughed awkwardly, then smirked. Teaching at night, huh? Another nudged him. Sounds more like courting than studying. A ripple of laughter followed. Shu Yan shot them a glare, but his ears were faintly red. Yuchen pretended not to notice. Instead, he reached into his sleeve again and placed a small bundle on the table. Food. Still warm. I made it earlier, he said simply. Shu Yan looked at it, then at him. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. The moment stretched. Quiet. Unspoken. Then Yuchen turned. I'll come tomorrow, he said, and just like that, he left. No hesitation. No looking back. The door closed softly behind him. For a second, no one moved. Then, boss? Shu Yan didn't look at them. What? The grin in their voices was unmistakable. You're done for. Laughter exploded in the room. Completely done. Studying for love. Even getting meals delivered? Shu Yan grabbed the nearest object and threw it. Get lost! They scattered, still laughing. But when the noise settled and the room grew quiet again, Shu Yan sat down slowly, the books still in his hands. He opened one. The characters swam before his eyes. Unfamiliar. Complicated. Annoying. He frowned. Troublesome. But he didn't close it. That night, for the first time, the broken house didn't echo with fights, but with something else. Halting voices, clumsy attempts, and under the dim light, a man who had never cared for anything beyond survival started learning, because someone believed he could. Night after night, Shen Yuchen slipped out like a shadow. At first, it was careful, measured steps, doors eased shut without a sound, breaths held between movements. But habit came quickly. Precision replaced caution. He knew exactly which floorboard creaked, which corner caught the moonlight, which moment the house fell into its deepest sleep, and every night he went to the same place. The broken house slowly changed, not in appearance. The walls were still cracked, the roof still leaked when it rained, and the floor remained uneven beneath their feet. But inside, something unfamiliar took root. This one, Yuchen said, tapping lightly on the page, means person. Shu Yan stared at the character as if it personally offended him. Why does it look like that? He muttered. Because it was simplified from a form that resembled a standing figure. Yuchen replied calmly. Shu Yan squinted harder. It looks like a broken stick. A snort came from the side. Boss, even a stick is smarter than you right now. The laughter didn't even finish. Sit down. Shu Yan's voice dropped, flat, dangerous. The man immediately froze. Book? He echoed weakly. Shu Yan's gaze lifted, slowly. You've been laughing for 3 days. Time to join. A chorus of groans erupted. Boss, we can't even read. Exactly. Shu Yan cut in. So learn. Silence. Then, a quiet, suppressed laugh. Yuchen. He lowered his gaze slightly, hiding the faint curve of his lips. And just like that, the class grew. At first, it was chaos. Men who had never held a brush properly struggled to form even the simplest strokes. Ink spilled, paper tore, complaints filled the air. Why does this thing have so many lines? My hand hurts. I'd rather fight 10 people than write this. Yuchen remained calm through it all. Patient. Precise. If you can hold a knife steady, he said, correcting someone's grip, you can hold a brush. Different things, the man protested. Not really. Shu Yan, sitting at the front, didn't complain. He struggled, frowned, occasionally cursed under his breath, but he didn't stop. Not once. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. Night fell. The lamp lit, and learning began. Yuchen's voice would fill the room, steady, clear, unwavering. Shu Yan's presence would anchor it, sharp, unyielding, impossible to ignore. And the others, grumbling, complaining, teasing, still stayed, still learned. But not everything remained hidden. Back at the Shen house, the absence grew noticeable. At first, it was small, a missing shadow in the courtyard, a door that opened too often, a son who returned too late. Then, it became a pattern. The second brother noticed first. Every night, he said one evening, his voice low with suppressed anger. He leaves every single night. The eldest brother frowned. Are you sure? I've seen it myself. He thinks we're blind? The sister-in-law glanced toward the inner rooms, lowering her voice. Keep it down. The children are sleeping. That's not the point, the second brother continued, frustration rising. Father set rules, and he's breaking them like they mean nothing. Enough, the eldest brother said firmly. The second brother turned to him. You're just gonna let this go? What do you want to do? He asked calmly. Confront him, immediately, directly, the way he always did. But before the argument could rise, a quiet voice interrupted. Don't. They both turned. The sister-in-law stood there, her expression gentle but firm. If you push him now, he'll only push back harder. The second brother clenched his jaw. But we can't just... Wait, she said softly. Wait and see. At the head of the room, their father sat in silence. He had heard everything, every word, but he didn't speak, not immediately. His gaze remained lowered, deep in thought, heavy, measured. Time passed. The tension in the room stretched thin. Then he finally moved. Follow him. The words were quiet, but decisive. The second brother's head snapped up. Father! Not to confront, he said, cutting him off. His eyes lifted slightly, sharp despite the calm. To see. A pause. Then, see what he's doing. His voice lowered. And why? Silence settled. This time, no one argued. The mother, who had been listening from the side, tightened her grip on her sleeve. Is this really necessary? She asked softly. Her voice carried worry, fear. The eldest sister, seated nearby, gently rested her hand over her own. It's better to know, she said, though her own eyes were uneasy. Because deep down, they all felt it. Something was changing. Something they didn't fully understand.
That night, the house did not sleep. Not truly. Two figures moved quietly through the darkness, following a third, step by step, into the unknown. And far ahead, under the dim glow of a small oil lamp, Shen Yuchen's voice continued, steady, patient, unaware that the truth was about to be seen. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant smoke. Two figures moved carefully along the narrow path, keeping their steps light, their breaths quieter than the wind itself. The second brother led, his expression tense, eyes fixed ahead. Behind him, the eldest brother followed, calm, steady, watching everything. At the edge of the village, they stopped. A dim light flickered inside the broken house. Voices drifted out. No, not like that, came Shen Yuchen's voice, clear, even through the worn walls. Your stroke is too heavy. Lift your hand slightly. Silence fell between the two brothers. The second brother frowned. What is he doing? He whispered. The eldest brother didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer to the cracked window, carefully, slowly, and looked inside. The sight froze them both. Inside the broken house, a small oil lamp illuminated a strange scene. Men they recognized, village troublemakers, men who usually loitered at corners and picked fights over nothing, sat in a loose circle. Each of them held a brush, awkwardly, clumsily, faces twisted in concentration. And at the center, Shen Yuchen sat upright, sleeves neatly arranged, posture composed. A book lay before him. His voice was calm, patient. Again, he said, write it 10 times. A groan arose immediately. 10? My hand's already dead. I'd rather fight someone. Then fight the paper, Yuchen replied, without looking up. The room fell into reluctant obedience. Ink scratched against paper, messy, uneven, but persistent. The second brother stared, speechless. This is what he had been sneaking out for? Teaching? These people? He's gone mad, he muttered under his breath. But the eldest brother didn't speak. His gaze shifted slightly, toward the front. Xu Yan sat there, closer to Yu Chen than anyone else, his large frame bent slightly over the low table, brush held stiffly between his fingers, his expression focused, serious, not a trace of mockery, not a hint of carelessness. He frowned at the paper like it was an opponent he refused to lose to. Wrong, Yu Chen said quietly. Xu Yan clicked his tongue, but adjusted his grip without complaint, and tried again. The second brother's expression tightened. They're all rough men. Look at them. How can he stay here every night? His voice carried anger, worry, something close to fear. I'm going in. He took a step forward, but a hand caught his arm, firm, steady. He turned sharply. What are you doing? Let go. Wait, the eldest brother said. His voice was low, but resolute. We came to see, he added, so watch. The second brother frowned deeply, clearly unwilling, but he didn't move again. Time passed. The lamp burned lower. The complaint slowly faded. The room grew quieter, more focused. Even the clumsy strokes began to steady just slightly, and through it all, Shen Yuchen never lost his patience, never raised his voice, never showed the cold disdain he once carried at home. Here, he was different, calm, guiding, present. The eldest brother's gaze softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. Finally, Yuchen closed the book. That's enough for today, he said. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Finally, my hand's gone. I can't feel my fingers. But beneath the complaints, there was something else, a strange, quiet satisfaction. Yuchen stood. Xu Yan stood with him. No words were exchanged, no gestures, but as Yuchen stepped out, Xu Yan followed, not beside him, not close, just behind, at a distance. The brothers exchanged a glance, then moved again, keeping to the shadows, following. The path back to the Shen house was dim, lit only by scattered moonlight. Yuchen walked ahead, stepped steady, unhurried. Xu Yan followed several steps behind, silent, watchful, like a shadow that refused to touch. At one turn, Yuchen slowed slightly. Without looking back, he spoke. Go back. His voice was soft, but clear. Xu Yan stopped. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, you saw me? He asked. Yuchen didn't turn. I always do. A pause, then, quietly. Don't come closer. If someone sees. I know. Xu Yan's reply was low, simple, understanding. Silence stretched between them. Then, Yuchen resumed walking, and Xu Yan did not follow further. He stayed where he was, watching, until that figure disappeared beyond the gate. Only then did he turn and leave. From the shadows, the two brothers stepped out slowly. Neither spoke for a long time, because what they had seen didn't match what they expected. Not at all. They didn't even touch, the second brother muttered finally. His voice sounded strange, uncertain. The eldest brother nodded faintly. Not even once. They returned home in silence. The house was still awake, waiting. The moment they stepped into the main hall, all eyes turned to them. Their mother rose halfway from her seat. What did you see? The sister leaned forward slightly, worry clear in her gaze. Even their father looked up. The second brother opened his mouth, then stopped. For once, he didn't know how to say it. The eldest brother stepped forward instead. His voice was calm. He's teaching them, he said. A pause. Every night. Confusion spread across their faces. Teaching? The mother repeated. Yes, he continued. Reading, writing. Silence, shock, disbelief. And that man? The father asked. The eldest brother's gaze flickered slightly. He learns the hardest, he said. Another silence fell. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then added. He follows Yu Chen back. The second brother looked at him surprised he mentioned it, but didn't interrupt. At a distance, the eldest brother continued, just to make sure he reaches home safely. No one spoke. The room felt different, as if something unseen had shifted. The father lowered his gaze again, long, thoughtful, no anger, no immediate judgment, just silence. And in that silence, the image lingered, of a quiet night, of ink-stained hands, of two figures walking under the same moon, close, yet never crossing the line, not even by a shadow. The sky had been heavy since morning. Dark clouds gathered low, pressing down on the village as if the air itself had grown restless. By noon, the first drops fell, slow, scattered. By afternoon, the rain came pouring, relentless, the kind that swallowed the earth whole. Quickly, the eldest brother shouted, already grabbing tools. If we don't reinforce the warehouse, the water will ruin everything. The courtyard was in chaos. Their father moved without hesitation, pulling on his outer coat. The second brother followed, jaws set. Even the mother tied her sleeves tightly, ignoring everyone's protests. We don't have enough hands, she said firmly. Stop wasting time. The sister-in-law handed the youngest child to Shen Yuchen before rushing to gather supplies. Only a few remained behind. Yuchen, his elder sister, his sister-in-law, who stayed to care for the children, and the storm. And the storm. Rain hammered against the roof. The house creaked under the weight of wind and water. Yuchen stood by the doorway, watching his family disappear into the gray curtain of rain. His chest felt tight, not from fear of the storm, but from memory. Last life, the same rain, the same chaos, the same moment when everything broke. A soft sound pulled him back. Yuchen, his sister's voice, weak, unsteady. He turned instantly. She was gripping the edge of the table, her face pale, breath uneven. Something was wrong. Jeje, he stepped closer quickly. What is it? Her fingers tightened. My stomach. His heart dropped. No, not this, not again. Her body trembled slightly as she tried to steady herself. It hurts. The sister-in-law froze for a second, then rushed forward. Labor, her voice broke. It's too early. The words struck like lightning. Yuchen's mind went blank. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. The image flashed before his eyes. Blood, crying, silence. A child that never...
Hey, don't forget to give thumbs up, give me a comment, and subscribe to see part 2. Now let's get into the story.